Hi, everybody. On this patriotic holiday, moving into the 4th of July, we have two topics I think that are apropos to this holiday, this celebration, this tribute to America, at least in the minds of some people. Now, we'll start off with a statement made just the other day by National Economic Council Director Brian Dees of the Biden administration, who was asked whether Americans should be affording to pay $4.85 a gallon for months, if not years. Is this sustainable because of what's going on in Ukraine, et cetera? And what Deese says of the Biden administration is, quote, "What you heard from the president today was a clear articulation of the stakes. This is about the future of, quote, the future of the liberal world order, and we have to stand firm." But at the same time, what I'd like to say to that family and to Americans across the country is you have a president and an administration that is going to do everything in its power to blunt those price increases and bring those prices down. But once again, the key phrase here in Deese's statement is this is about the future of the liberal world order. We're going to start with Rack, who has for years been telling me that the New World Order does exist and it's up to no good, and it's already conditioning the population to be unpatriotic and to go over to a woke, illogical, loony type of approach to our government and the history of our country. Also with us is Brian Thomas, most lately of the AP News Bureau in Washington, D.C., and a longtime journalist, and also Mark Collinsworth, to my left on the screen, who's a economic expert who watches trends, the economic trends, and how that interacts with the movements of this nation in relation to other nations in the world. So we're going to start off with Rack. And do you see this as a confirmation of what you've been insisting on all these years, that the New World Order does exist as an organization, and it is up to tear down the United States and bring in a world government, a new world order? So is this confirmation for you?
Well, it's one of many. Yeah. I mean, there's much more confirmation for those who look. Why wouldn't it be? People have been trying to control the world for thousands of years. Ancient Rome, the Roman Empire, China and all its doings in the ancient times, Japan, with all its different groups that tried to control all of Japan, and from there an extension of the world. People have been trying to control the world forever. Why wouldn't it be being done now?
Rack, is that just a loose phrasing that they like to improve the U.S. and the world generally, but it doesn't reflect this nefarious, hidden, evil organization that has been passed down through the centuries? Brian Thomas, what do you think?
Well, look, I think that there's some validity to that. I think the question is who's going to be the king when we get done with this, and that's the big unknown here, is how developed this plan is right now and who is in the catbird seat to try to pull it off.
Wait a minute, Brian. Are you telling me that there is credibility to this, a new world order working behind the scenes to bring America?
Yeah, I'm not so sure how advanced it is. I'm saying there are those who would like to bring it about. How successful they're going to be, how far along they are, and more importantly, how many followers they have is up for grabs. Mark
Collinsworth.
I don't think there's a bunch of people basically wearing, hoods in a dark room plotting to overtake the world. I think it's like it's always been for thousands of years. There's a certain playbook that you have to follow to gain more power, because that's what they all want. They just want more power. It's just like, in the Roman Empire, they outlawed their enemies to be able to carry swords. You see that today with the Second Amendment, with them trying to take away guns. It's the same thing. You have to follow that playbook if you want to be in a position of power.
Mark, not that I'm necessarily on board with the New World Order. However, the question I've been asking myself over the past year or so, as one thing after another seems to be directed to the weakening of America, I ask myself, is this really just coincidental? Is it really just a matter of incompetence or stupidity? or extreme political ideology, or is there a bigger pattern to this? I mean, it seems that one thing after another is being instituted that weakens the country in one way or another, spreads social chaos, dissent, different groups sectioned off against each other, fighting. It's a type, I mean, there's a classic, as you say, with the Roman Empire, divide and conquer. Now, is all this just coincidental?
Well, I don't think it's a coincidence. I mean, it goes back to the playbook. What everyone's calling a new world order, it's just simply the people that are in charge want to be more in charge with more power, and they want more control. So it's not that they're trying to have the scheme. They're just simply look at their own self-interest of how can they get more power and keep that power. That's all it comes down to.
Now, the people in charge, who are they? Illuminati, from centuries back, or just a bunch of rich people that want to have more power, more money, more control?
Well, that's kind of like, looking at history. The Illuminati was never a group that was set up to form a new world order. It was actually a group of people who went against what the church beliefs, like, the world is flat, the sun revolves around the earth. These were scientists that just simply went against the teachings of the church, and they had to go underground. And as the old saying goes, whatever is secret must be bad. And people started putting a bad connotation on the Illuminati, when really all it was a group of scientists who disagreed with the present day teachings of the church.
Brack, I know you want to give an answer to that.
I've studied this stuff for like a little bit over 20 years. And I've gotten into it almost daily for that length of time. Unless you put the efforts in, you're not going to see it. However, there's a lot of stuff hidden in plain sight, which people ignore or brush over or just don't pay attention to. If I may have like a minute and a half of screen share.
Go ahead.
All right, let me share my screen here. Tell me when you can see it.
We do.
All right.
It's coming.
Right on the back of the dollar bill is a Egyptian pyramid, and under the inscription of it is Novus Ordo Seclorum. Now, I'm not going to argue the meaning of the last word too much, but Novus is new, Ordo is order, and Seclorum, as far as I'm concerned, is of the world, worldly world. New world order is written right on the back of the dollar bills. Some people will say this is of the ages, and I've looked up etymology of it. I won't go into it too much, but eventually it does mean, as far as I'm concerned, world. Now, as far as the legitimacy of the phrase New World Order as being a specific thing or a general thing, let me show a 1 minute long video. Oh, wait. I don't think I'm sharing with audio. Let me bring that back and share with audio. Here's sharing with audio of 1 minute of a video I made.
The New World Order.
A new world order. A new world order. New world order. A new world order. For a new world order. We have a new world order. For the new world order. New world order. It's new and involving world order. The new world order. The new world order. The new world order.
The New World Order.
A new world order. New world order. A new world order. New world order. A new world order. New world order.
The New World Order. The New World Order.
A new order for the centuries, for the ages, forever.
A new world order. A new world order.
Interdependent world order.
The New World Order.
A new world order.
A new world order.
A new world order.
The New World Order. It's a New World Order. New World Order.
A new world order.
The new world order.
Of a new world order.
A new world order. A new world order.
A new world order.
A world order that I think all of us would like to see.
It goes into a music video I made. Let me continue on real quick while I'm screen sharing. You have the Georgia Guidestones, a monument in Georgia from an unknown entity, mysterious, that just popped up one time. And when you go into the inscriptions written in several languages of that monument, it says, maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature as the first quote unquote commandment. Well, there's a problem with maintaining humanity under 500 million since we're 7.5 billion. So the question becomes, what happens to the other 7 billion? One last thing. There's a document that was entered into the congressional record in 1963. This is it. You can find it easily on the internet in PDF form. It goes about, it's called the 45 Goals of Communism, and it lists 45 different things that were going to be attempted by communism to try to push communism on the world. Let's see if I can enlarge it a little bit so that it could be a little bit easier seen. I'm going to skip some of them, but you can get this document easily. Promote the UN basically as a world takeover, okay? Capture both political parties of the United States. This is from 1963. And the document is even older than that. It was just entered in a congressional record in 1963. Use technical discussions to weaken American institutions, blah, blah, blah. You can read it as on your own time by pausing the screen. I'm just going to skim. They can control of the schools, use them for transmission belts of socialism and communism, gain control of student newspapers. These are plans. Use student riots to foment public protests against organizations. Take a look at all the statues that have been brought down by student riots and other things. Infiltrate the press, get control of book review assignments, etc. Gain control of key positions in radio, TV, and motion pictures. Why motion?
Correct. Hold on. Yeah, something we should point out here that really kind of is striking at this point is present homosexuality, degeneracy, and promiscuity as normal, natural, and healthy.
All this stuff is kind of either going on now or has already happened. In here they say to somehow get rid of the Panama Canal from United States control. Well, that's been done. So either these things are being done currently and they're current news, or they've already been done.
31, belittle all forms of American culture and discourage, you just went up on me.
The teaching of American history on the ground that it was only a minor part of the big picture.
Give more emphasis to Russian history since communism took over. That's not happening, but the first part is belittling all forms of American culture.
Take a look at number 30. Discredit the American founding fathers, present them as selfish aristocrats who had no concern for the common man, except for the last part there. Discredit the American founding fathers. So instead of going with the discrediting them from being aristocrats, they said, oh, well, they owned slaves. So they switched it up a little bit. They're bashing them on the slave aspect, but they're still accomplishing the goal of discrediting the American founding fathers. Yeah. So I'm going to stop sharing. These are just the tip. This is like one atom at the tip of the iceberg of New World Order stuff.
In fact, one of the upstate New York universities just took down a plaque of the Gettysburg Address because, according to reports, one person complained about it. And also a portrait of Lincoln. Now, according to the history I've read, Lincoln did the Emancipation Proclamation. And another thing that I was just watching an old movie of Huckleberry Finn, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. That's been banned in a lot of schools as being racist. Actually, Mark Twain was anti-slavery, and his portrait of Jim, it was the N-word Jim because it reflected the prejudice of the day. The whole story was about the injustice being done to this runaway slave. And now that's banned because of the N-word and other stuff. So, I mean, the cultural destruction is out of control, but I'm getting off the topic now. So with what Rack just presented, is that a more convincing case that this really is planned, directed, orchestrated, and it's growing in its influence?
I want to direct that.
Oh, John.
Hey, how you doing?
Oh, okay.
I got all these messages. I don't know when you started.
We started about 10 minutes ago, but just a quick review. We're starting off first with a statement made by National Economic Council Director Brian Dees of the Biden administration, who said, "What you heard from the president today was a clear articulation of the stakes. This is about, quote, the future of the liberal world order, and we have to stand firm." So we start off this conversation about Does the New World Order exist? Is this confirmation that it does exist? And, is it becoming more and more invasive and destructive to America? Now, RAC has been presenting a bunch of points of the Communist Party in the congressional record back in 1960, which seems to reflect exactly what's going on now with cancel culture things. So what do you think?
Well, I think people talking and labeling stuff doesn't make it. So
you think?
I think a lot of it's just wordplay. What order? There's always a new order in the world. The world's always changing, and then people attach labels to this or that aspect of the change, suiting their own notions or interests or take on it, and then they try to convince people that they're describing things as they are becoming or ought to be, and that's been going on forever. I don't think people are attempting to, in the world there are people attempting to control resources and activities of people, as they've been doing forever and ever. Own them, make money off them, get people to vote for them, or deprive them of a vote, or put them in prison, or execute them, or whatever. This is going on all the time. So I don't think just because Biden says Biden's no master of the universe, they might be trying to convince people that they're controlling things, but you can tell a lot of this stuff is out of people's control, and then they're responding to new situations. Russia does this invasion, and then people start responding in different ways depending upon what they want to do with. I think in the case of Russia, it's a big land mass with a lot of resources, and various people have wanted to control the mass and the resources, or split them up. I think now they would like to weaken Russia if they can take chunks out of it, or chunks out of, get some of the Central Asian countries maybe to not align with them. Who knows what's going to happen? But no, I don't think there's a master plan, communist, liberal, or anything kind of order that's being inflicted on the world.
All right, by the way, audience, this is John Woodford, who just joined us, and he's a longtime journalist and editorial writer, a long career in journalism. Yeah. So, John, so there's two schools of thought that it is an organization. It's an actual organization. It's been around for years, and it's imposing all of these elements that are weakening our society, creating division, divide and conquer, the old Roman rule. And there's so much of it coming down at once that this is beyond coincidence, beyond incompetence, beyond stupidity. That there is a plan of attack here, and it's ongoing. But however, Mark Collinsworth, up on my left there to the screen, believes that it's just a bunch of rich, powerful people that we've had in every generation, just trying to make more money and seize more control.
That's right. Okay, I'm with Mark.
But it's no, coherent, maybe ancient organization of evildoers.
Yeah. Okay.
RAC has a strikingly different opinion. RAC, why don't you review a little bit of what you told us before John joined us?
Well, he missed a little bit of what I was presenting there, but there was various political figures that are well known that have spoken about the quote unquote New World Order, using those words or variation thereof throughout the last bunch of years. So there's very powerful people talking about the New World Order. It could be, I guess, looked at as a general term, but it could also be looked at as a specific term, meaning that there is a group of people trying to take over the world, and they're actively doing it. There has been I'm presenting like 1/1000th of the evidence that I could present. If we were here for 30 hours, maybe I might put a little dent into presenting evidence. But there is evidence out there for those that look. However, there's a trick that the government and the New World Order uses to get people to not look, and that's by demonizing and calling it a conspiracy theory, which is a demonized phrase, regarding the New World Order. So people think it's an embarrassment. I'm not going to look into that ridiculous thing. That's ridiculous.
Well, you know, John, I think part of you're being programmed by the birds chirping behind you. That's
Oh yeah, those are nice birds. Well, you know, they had a Pax Romana. They have people have the notion of a Pax Americana. People have the notion of actually there are people in Washington on the so-called liberal and right who have the notions of domination by military force of the United States or the Western world or this or that. I mean, there are always people with schemes. You know, they got their money and they want to hold on to it, and they arrange the laws, and they try to scare regular people into feeling insecure, so they'll support them in their endeavors. Right now, they're fleecing the American public with all of these, they either by saying they're fighting inflation, or they're going to fight, they're going to support Ukraine to the however many billions it takes. Well, I can tell you one thing, that those billions aren't going to be going to Ukrainians.
Yeah, well, actually, you know, Bryant's Brian Thomas with us. You know, he's usually, you know, on the more less conspiratorial side, but Brian has been telling us that he thinks there is some credibility to this. Why don't you tell us more about that, Brian?
Well, all I'm saying is that it's open for dialogue. I'm not saying that it exists in totality. I think that there's enough information there for people to want to know more. But separate from that, the two things that you started with, and that was the New World Order and the other comments about gasoline prices and all of the hurt that that's imposing on the American people. I don't think those are, I think they're non sequiturs. I don't think they're related at all. Here's my take on that. If you have an administration that knows it's getting murdered by the gas pump prices, it's going to take every action it possibly can to try to bring them down, especially by the time we vote in November. That's job one. I don't think the New World Order plays into this at all. I think they're more concerned about the economy. Marcus had this statement all along, that it's the economy, stupid. And the biggest part of that economy right now is gas prices. Yeah, well, that's the big hook right here. It isn't the New World Order.
In terms of bringing down gas prices, you're saying the administration is going to do all it can. Mark says there are things they could do to turn it around fairly quickly, but they refuse to do because of their political philosophy. Mark.
That's correct. You know, they keep saying that they're doing everything possible. Well, no, then why don't you allow drilling on federal lands? I mean, they've shut that down. Open up that pipeline that you shut down. And just yesterday, Joe Biden said, hey, we're going to assign all these new permits to open up offshore drilling for the offshore drilling rigs off the coast of California and the Gulf of Mexico. And all these oil companies like, oh, wow, they were salivating, getting ready to get a chance at that. And lo and behold, the Biden administration forgets to submit or open up the window for them to even bid. Now it's closed. They got to start the entire process over again. If you look at what the Biden administration is doing, they're systematically destroying the oil industry. If you have to go back to Joe Biden's election, he says, he looks that little girl in the eyes and he says, look me in the eyes. I promise you, I am going to destroy the oil industry. Congratulations, Joe. You're halfway there.
Yeah, again, you know, it's this catch-22. He says, there's all these oil leases, thousands of them, that the oil companies that we've lent to the oil companies, they're not using them. They're not using them because, as Mark points out, and you're not hearing on mainstream media, by executive order, Biden has prevented oil drilling on federal land. So while they have the leases, they don't have the permission. So that whole thing is hocus pocus, correct?
That is correct.
Until maybe some parts of the oil industry start pouring some dough his way. You know, he was going to do this and that to Saudi Arabia. Now he's over there kowtowing to him. Obama, when he came in, he was going to do something or other for the women's rights and women's body and all that kind of stuff. They got him quoted in what he said when he came in. And then, of course, when he got in, somehow or another, that never happened. So, you know, you got to take all this stuff with a grain of salt, because they start scrambling around and they are purchasable their influence is purchasable, and their positions are purchasable. And what they say today, who knows what they're going to be saying next week.
Okay, getting back though to what Deese said, the Economic Council chairman, that this is about the future of the liberal world order. And what I'm posing here as a question is all this just coincidental? You've got open borders, you've got the cartels in control, human trafficking, fentanyl coming across, which is affecting kids all over the country. You've got crime increasing in the major cities controlled by Democrats. You've got one thing after another that, and all this woke stuff in school, critical race theory, America was founded on racism, this and that, blah, blah, blah. Is all this just the people who got Biden elected getting out of control with his blessing because they got him elected? Or is there more of a pattern to this, part of the quote, new world order? The basic question.
Look, if you think this started with the election of Joe Biden, think again. It was in place a long time before Joe Biden ever took the oath of office.
What was specific?
All of the things you just mentioned.
The border crisis? It's
every bit of it was in place.
Right.
Look, I remember in the Bush administration, never mind the Obama administration.
No.
The Bush administration said, this president, Bush 43, said, I love these people. Just remember that.
Yeah.
His words.
Okay.
His words. And one of the things that you got to remember is that no one has been able to solve the border crisis. No administration, no president, no Congress, no governor, no nobody.
The border crossings have not increased 10, 20-fold since Biden took office. Is that what you're telling me?
I'm not telling you that at all. I'm saying that it didn't start. It didn't start with Biden.
If you build a wall, it'll stop it. And there was a wall approved. Joe Biden said, hey, let's stop the wall. We paid how many billions of dollars, and that equipment, the steel fences are just sitting there rusting. It was already paid for. Joe Biden basically threw $2 billion of your tax dollars down the toilet. It was already paid for. And a wall would definitely stop a lot of people.
The stay in Mexico policy, the way they're curbing the border patrol and condemning them, there is no question, Brian, that it hasn't increased tremendously, the crisis at the border, under the Biden administration in 1.5 years. Now, also with all this counterculture, now Trump was trying to avoid it. He was trying to curb it as an outgoing president, but now it's wide open again. And the kids are being indoctrinated.
How do you get the fact that he was trying to curb it?
Because when they were going to tear down the statue of one of our founding fathers near Washington, the rioters, he imposed the law that you'd get 10 years in jail for destroying public property. That curbed a lot of it right away. But it was being encouraged by the Democrats that brought Biden into power. These riots won't stop. They shouldn't stop. There's going to be more of them. Kamala Harris. They're one thing after another. They didn't say a darn thing about the violence in the summer of 2020 when they were setting fire to places. They were attacking police stations, even federal buildings. No complaints from the Biden administration Democrats. Now, finally, Biden has said, well, we shouldn't have violence because he knows that he wants to get ahead of it because it's going to be increasing. Merrick Garland, his attorney general, an existing federal law, you cannot protest in front of a Supreme Court justice's home for the purpose of intimidation or influencing a decision. They were all over the place. Even after somebody tried to allegedly assassinate Kavanaugh, Garland didn't call off the dogs. So what is going on? You're telling me that it hasn't gotten much worse against Biden, under Biden?
Well, it all depends on your perspective. I mean, I think, look, if
these are facts.
The polarization that has occurred under Donald Trump is not going to be reversible in a short period of time. He has stirred up every nut in the woodwork that you can think of, and they're out for bear right now, and they're not going away easily. They're going to stick around and cause more trouble. Mark my words.
Nuts on the Trump side, or also nuts on
the Trump side, of course.
No, that's not. No. Trump. People went after Trump because the people on the left were getting tired of him taking their little empires apart. Before Trump, oh yeah, hey, if you want to throw a Molotov cocktail at a police car, oh, go ahead and do it. Donald Trump said, nope, that's wrong. You start destroying private property, you're going to have the book thrown at you in the law books. And the liberals didn't like it because that was shutting them down. Just like if someone stood up in Nazi Germany in 1938, they would have shut Adolf Hitler down. But if you compare Nazi Germany today, you see a lot more similarities between the liberals and the Nazi party. By the way, the word Nazi is an acronym that stands for socialism. Has a whole lot more in similar with it than the Republican Party does.
The Nazis were bankrolled and put in office by the leading corporate financiers and rich people of Germany.
Right.
And not to mention George Bush's grandfather, who owned a bank, was one of the financiers for the Nazi Party.
And they crushed labor unions as soon as they got in. They went after and they suppressed the power of the unions. So I mean, people, these names and labels of stuff, you have to look behind them because a lot of it's just wordplay, obfuscation.
John, you know, that looks like an elitist cigar that you're smoking. That looks like a $50 cigar. I mean,
yeah,
no, it's not. I was my cigars are only about 10 or 11 bucks max.
That's
why I keep going out.
I get
cigar.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, I get kind of fired up on these things because, you know, I'm kind of tired of showing liberals the facts, showing facts, and they sit back here and go, no, that's not right, blah 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 this, and I'm just getting fed up with you can't show a fact to a liberal anymore because their ideology. Give you a perfect example. Ruth Ginsburg, a Supreme Court justice, said multiple times that Roe v. Wade wasn't about abortion. It was bad law. It was wrong law. And if it ever got back in the Supreme Court, it would totally follow all its principles of law. But guess what? She said, I'm going to defend Roe v. Wade to the end. That shows right there. She's a lawyer. She wants to ignore the facts of the law. But when it comes to her ideology, she's more than happy to push her ideology, even when it pushes against the law.
New World Order. Rack, what's
that's what the right wing Supreme Court justices are pushing their ideology while they're in there.
But they follow the law. I mean, the law.
All right. Look, how about this week's ruling in the EPA? 7 years ago, the same court upheld the EPA's ability to do exactly what it is doing with emission curbing. This court, 7 years later, throws the whole thing out. Don't you think that's kind of strange?
That's an inaccurate statement, Brian. It's only half. You're distorting it because what you're leaving out is the ruling says that you can't. The executive branch does not have the power to do that, to empower the regulatory agency to do it. Congress has to pass it. That's following the Constitution. Now, you may not like the result of it, but that is more of an adherence to the Constitution.
Look, I did some research. I did some research on this, and the 1990 Clean Air Act amendments, which were passed by Congress overwhelmingly, by the way, and signed into law by Bush 41, gave the EPA exactly the kind of authority to curb emissions that this court has now thrown on the scrap heap. It's all written out. This court chose to ignore the history of the EPA step by step, starting with the Clean Air Act in 63 and again in 70 and again in 90. These things were all put into place and approved by Congress.
And they haven't embellished it since then, is what you're saying.
The issue is not embellishment. The issue is how the EPA was given the authority to move against pollution. And they have not changed.
They're also moving against stare decisis. They're moving against the principle of letting the earlier Supreme Court decisions hold sway. They're undoing that. They're undoing that too. So they're doing a lot of stuff.
Well, I mean,
and what are their motives? If you think it's to make a better country,
they've overturned precedents before when it's warranted. I mean,
overturning precedents is one thing, but what's the basis of it?
Because it's bad law.
Again, yeah, Brian, I haven't.
They don't want the government to be able to regulate things because they see that as against their interests. So they want to get rid of regulatory power.
They want to do that.
They have a notion that the states are going to be doing all this stuff, and somehow that if a state is oppressing a citizen of the state, somehow you can just close your eyes at that. There's nothing to stop a state.
Years ago, Larry, you might remember there was a candidate for governor by the name of John Rowland and a candidate for governor by the name of Lowell Weicker in Connecticut.
Connecticut, yeah.
And the two of them, if you remember, were given a challenge by the Chamber of Commerce to come up with what was called a state implementation plan. It was part and parcel to exactly what John was talking about. And that was to give the states permission to step in and take a hold of certain functions of the Clean Air Act, depending upon what was germane to their geographical locations. Not one state could come up with anything that flew. It was just a hodgepodge of arguments after arguments after arguments, and no state was able to come up with a plan that was viable. So why on God's green earth would you let the states try this again? That's crazy.
It's unconstitutional not to have the states decide it. I mean, it's just simple.
But they can't do it, and they haven't been able to do it.
That's
so
irrelevant.
But the 10th Amendment says they have the right to do it. I mean,
that's right. I'm not
the
disputing that. But the trouble is, they're screwing up by not doing it.
What you're saying is because they've screwed up, they didn't come to any sensible restrictions on their own. Therefore, the Supreme Court shouldn't be following the Constitution.
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying the Supreme Court did not look at the entire picture with this ruling.
But I think
you can't tell me that so much has changed in 7 years that it means a complete reversal of what the court said 7 years ago. That's crazy.
So if the states can't come up with a plan because there's too much infighting and all that, therefore the Supreme Court should allow the federal government to decide contrary to what the Constitution says.
The Constitution and this law, the Clean Air Act of 1990, in this case as amended, has not been declared unconstitutional. The functions of the EPA under this act, by the way, when it was signed into law, Mitch McConnell said it was fine legislation.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, goodness. What has happened in 20 years to turn him around like this?
well, probably the same thing that turned NAFTA around.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go by Mitch McConnell. Look, I've said repeatedly that both sides are on the take. Both sides are corrupt. Both sides are in it for themselves. But, you know, let's get back to our original thing here, whether the New World Order exists. And Rack, what's that behind you? What image? How does that play into the talk about the New World Order?
That is Denzel Washington in the movie Manchurian Candidate. But what I'd like to say is what I'm hearing is I'm talking about a big picture. I'm talking about the forest. I'm hearing people argue about 2 or 3 leaves. You're not seeing the forest. The New World Order exists. It is trying to take over. And what it is doing is it's fomenting chaos. Their slogan, if you want to call it that, is order out of chaos. You can't have order out of chaos if you don't first have chaos. What you see going on in the world is an increase in chaos. They want the disruption. They want the out of control gas prices, the out of control food prices, the no baby. They want all this stuff to be elevated so that they can then come in and offer some kind of order. What you're arguing about things that are minuscule, and I'm talking about a forest.
So are they organized? I guess they must have organized the Great Depression too.
Yes, I would say they did.
Mark, what do you think? You're the financial expert.
I'm going to disagree with that. I would probably say that was a whole bunch of, it was just a perfect storm. It was a whole bunch of mistakes that came together at the same time.
This is why nobody understands my point of view. In 1920s, there was the tobacco companies, they were selling their cigarettes and tobacco to men. And there was a taboo against women smoking throughout the whole world. Edward Bernays, the nephew of Sigmund Freud, was approached by the tobacco companies and said, hey, what can we do about this? We're losing half our business here. He says, let me chew on it. Comes back right around Easter time and comes back with a plan. He knows there's going to be a parade in New York at Easter time. He gets 5 or 6 what they call debutantes, nice, beautiful young women, to come in their garters. They have cigarettes. He calls the press over. The press comes over. They start photographing these women because Edward Bernays told them something's good's going to happen. And at a particular time, the women all pull out their cigarettes and light up their cigarettes, and they talk about their torches of freedom. And the entire press went wild with this because of the young, sexy women. And it was put in all the newspapers across the world. And shortly after that, the whole world began smoking. That's mind control from one person to the entire world.
And that played into the emerging.
Let me ask Mark about Napoleon and how Napoleon.
They insidiously got those women to want to vote too. Damn it,
Mark. How did the Napoleon, when he won the war, how was that taken with the Rothschilds in the Bank of England?
Again, I think that just comes back to Rothschilds. That's just a really rich person
What
that wants to
happened?
get richer. That just wants to get richer.
What happened?
You're talking about them pulling the financing.
Tell it. Tell the story.
The Rothschilds pulled the financing, and then you're talking about the Battle of Waterloo with the Duke of Wellington. Napoleon's army was defeated. Maynard Rothschild, he ran into the London Stock Exchange and started selling stocks, telling, hey, Napoleon has defeated the English army. He's going to invade London next. The British stock market, I think, dropped 70% that day. He started going in and buying up stocks like crazy. Then later that day, it was realized that Napoleon was wiped out and the end of the world wasn't coming. And Mr. Rothschild made multi-million dollars of money.
Broke the Bank of England. He broke the Bank of England.
He broke the Bank of England, yeah.
Because of a little manipulation of people's thoughts.
But was he doing that for a new world order, or was it just a rich guy that wanted to get a little bit richer?
That particular instance, I would say it's a rich guy that wanted to get a little bit richer. I'm not saying it's a new world order thing. However, that's an example of how a little bit of a lie in one place can make a massive difference in another.
So, Rack, is Biden the Manchurian candidate?
Well, obviously, I don't think Biden runs anything. I mean, I don't know if he can make
That's true.
one of the bathrooms on his own, without asking questions. Not to mention the fact, wasn't he just caught holding up a card telling them what to do? Step 1, you enter the room. Step 2.
Oh, yeah.
Come on.
All right.
Biden isn't in control of anything. He is a Manchurian candidate. Someone's pulling his strings. He's not running anything.
All right, that slides us into our next topic, kind of related, is new polls.
Trump's got Bannon and Stephen Miller operating his strings.
That's right.
I love the cigar. You look like a Bond villain right now. If you had a white cat on your lap, it would be perfect.
Yeah, I think you're really,
You had a cigar you had a cigar several sessions ago, didn't you?
Larry.
Yeah, but not a cigar like that.
Larry, right.
This is a modest cigar.
During the Obama administration, Larry, the Smith-Mundt Act was reversed, which allowed now for propaganda to be done on the American people by the American government.
Right.
Now you got CNN, MSNBC, all these things feeding out whatever they want to feed out. And those that watch and take that seriously, I believe, are mind control.
Okay, in fact, that's our next topic, social engineering, which Rack has also been warning about for years, that this is really causing a change in Americans' thinking. And new polls are showing that half of Americans say that Americans are becoming less patriotic. Record low, 38% extremely proud to be an American. The majority of Americans now say that they are not proud of their country. Is that a result of social engineering, or is it based on reality? Is it based on the perceptions that the country really is racist, it really is unfair, it really is evil, and we should not be proud of America, especially during the 4th of July holiday? So, John, what do you think?
I think the fact that people might be not wanting to go to a lot of public celebrations might be because a lot of these celebrations and observances have been commercialized so much that people would rather just sit back and do stuff on their own because they know that most of the thrust is just to get them to go down to a store and be induced to borrow money to buy something.
I'd agree with that, but the polls are showing that the majority of Americans are no longer very proud to be an American. Now, Brian thinks that the polls are.
I think it depends on how these questions are asked.
Brian,
That's exactly right.
These
exactly
questions
right.
are asked in such a way.
Look,
I think most people would rather be here than most people in this country would rather be in this country than to be in any other country.
That's correct.
I don't think
Now, look, it depends on who did the question and how they were asked. And more importantly, after 5 years of Trump and his fractured fairy tales, it is no wonder that patriotism has been suppressed. That's easy to figure out. Easy to figure out.
Just the opposite, Brian.
No,
Yeah, I agree with letting all these
not.
people come across
Absolutely
the
not.
free programs. I mean,
Absolutely
crashing the
not. Nothing
Constitution.
doing.
I can see why the liberals have really done a lot of damage.
No,
Yeah, I
nothing
mean-
doing. Nothing doing.
Trump was not New World Order. Therefore, Trump has been demonized out the kazoo by the mainstream media press because they can't have someone that's not in their control.
I would
as
agree with
president of
that.
the United States.
I agree with that.
I
agree.
I don't see it that way at all.
Ask for proof. I will offer this as proof. Go to any news article, anywhere, somewhat mainstream, it has to be mainstream, and try to find a news article that talks about Trump and the election and how Trump views the election, and see if it's not editorialized with the false allegations by Trump or the incorrect. I mean,
president.
article that doesn't editorialize.
Well, let me ask this to Brian. I'm sure you've watched the January 6th trials. Everything on there is very one-sided. They won't even, the Jan 6 committee has totally barred anyone that will come on there and say anything in Trump's defense. Do you think that's fair? Do you think that's fair? Would you like to be in that situation where you're not allowed a defense? Is that fair?
I'm not saying they're not allowed a defense. They wanted to come on and disrupt the hearings. They wanted to advance the Trump agenda, not tell the truth. That's a big difference.
There's a litmus test we could use, a litmus test. Okay, the first Bill of Rights, the First Amendment. Who's against it and who's for it? Do you think people should be banned from talking and saying things? Well, what I'll hear is this: oh yeah, if they're giving lies, they should be banned. If they're presenting, well, who's to determine that? Number two, Second Amendment. Are you pro Second Amendment? Shall not be infringed, or are you against guns? See, the people, I've been, Larry, before you start talking, I see you itching there. I was in I was reading a news article and they have a comment section, and someone said, I told them that their views, they were brainwashed. They said, no, you're brainwashed. I said, well, wait a minute. I'm pro First Amendment. You're not. You want to ban people. I'm pro Second Amendment. You're not. You want to ban guns, and so on and so forth. So that's the litmus test. I'm in accord with 260 years of Americana, and they have changed. And then they're calling me off base.
All right, Rack, it's not even a matter of banning somebody who's going to tell a lie. That's not how it works in a real court of law. You get on the witness stand. If you tell a lie, you're cross-examined, and they try to uncover that lie. Let all sides speak, whether it's truth or whether it's a lie. And in the cross-examination, in the mix, you're supposed to arrive at the truth. But I mean, this is a show trial of the ilk that they had in the Soviet Union and other communist dictatorial countries. I mean, this is a joke. And it's all done. It's all done.
Not a trial.
No, the joke was January 6th.
That is another joke. You think that's an insurrection?
So just like
Yes,
that
I do.
little girl, the girl
Absolutely.
that was on TV saying that Trump grabbed the steering wheel, even CNN admits she wasn't even in the car, and the two Secret Service agents who were actually in the car that said they had to fight Donald Trump off says, we want to get on here and set the record straight. The Jan 6 committee banned the people that want to tell the truth but are promoting the person telling the lie. And I don't care what you believe on January 6th. I just want you to admit it's one-sided and it's unfair. You wouldn't want to be in any kind of situation to where 100% of the people testified against you were making up lies. Nobody would want that. And I'm just asking for being fair. I'm not asking to make a decision on Jan 6. Just be fair.
You're going to tell me you were going to tell me that Trump wanted to go down there and shut down the protesters, or go down there and egg them on? Which
it doesn't matter. Did he grab a Secret Service's arm and they had to fight him off? 2 Secret Service agents who were trained in hand-to-hand combat. You're telling me he jumped across the? I mean, what, a 70-year-old man jumps over the freaking front seat of a car with 2 young Secret Service agents and grabs the steering wheel with both of his hands. And then while one guy's fighting him off the steering wheel, he grabs the other Secret Service agent by the throat and starts shaking him. Really? Let's talk about reality.
But what was his purpose, Mark? Did he want to go down and shut?
We're not talking about purpose. Is that true? What she said, was that a true statement? Was she telling the truth? Was she telling the truth? That's all I want you to say.
And then she was
I don't know.
Right.
All the testimony should
Okay,
be
wait. Was she there? Was she there? Just tell me, was she in the limo? Was she in the limo?
As far as I know, yes.
Oh, you know what? No, she was not.
She reported what she claimed that she was told.
In a court of law, that's called hearsay.
And I think that all testimony,
that's inadmissible. In a courtroom, that's hearsay. It's called hearsay.
It is hearsay. All of it should be subject to rebuttal, cross-examination. All witnesses who could shed light on it should be allowed.
The point I'm trying to make here is I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying Donald Trump was right or not. I'm just saying, is it fair what is currently happening with the presentation they had with that girl? Is it fair and is it truthful? That's all I want you to say.
Yeah, I mean, the star witness.
No, it's not. I don't think it's. No, it's just it's a show, and as a matter of fact, I think it's a toothless show, and I don't think that they're even going to have an impact or effect that they might wish to have.
I think it will. I think it will juice up support for Trump because people see how one-sided it is.
Brian thinks it's going to hurt Trump. But anyway, the star witness, second, third-hand hearsay. I heard from somebody who said she was talking to somebody who heard something to the effect that he said, you know, that's testimony, that's not subject to cross-examination and considered valid. That's how much of a joke this is. This is a travesty of the American judicial system, the way it's supposed to work to protect all of us.
And not a judicial.
First of all, it's not judicial. That's right.
It's a political show.
It's a political organization.
That's right.
What's the purpose of the political show? What's the purpose of the political show?
Well,
political show, and
they're hoping they're going to get votes, and we'll see if they. I don't think they're going to get votes through this sort of a thing.
I don't either. Liz Cheney, she's running at an 8% probability that she will even be the Republican representative for Wyoming.
Our tax dollars are paying for that political show trial that's staged by the Democrats. It's absurd and it's offensive.
And
we're not
what happened with the Russian collusion investigation? That has just fallen completely apart. That's nothing but lies. The DNC, the election committee, is actually fining Hillary Clinton $5 million for making up lies against a political opponent. And is she even trying to take that to court to appeal it? No, she's writing out a check for $5 million because she doesn't want any more publicity on it.
Mark and I are not saying whether Trump is right or wrong, guilty or not guilty. What we're saying is you won't determine the truth by this kind of a show trial, which is nature to embarrass Trump, hopefully to impeach him, hopefully to get him not to run again for another term, hopefully to indict him and jail him. I mean, this is totally not the American way. And the more they do that, the more it chips away on the constitutional elements that have kept us free and safe all these years. They're doing away with that little by little. The boiling frog analogy. That's what happened in Hitler's Germany, by the way. This is what happened repeatedly in other countries that were taken over by dictatorships.
What about this? Why can't the Trump people show up and testify? They've been subpoenaed, they've been asked, they've been cajoled, and no one has shown up.
Yeah, part of that is because it destroys executive privilege. I'm sure Biden, if they ever toss his rear end out of there or impeach him if a red wave comes in midterm, he's not going to want his people testifying what he said, what he bumbled about, all the incompetence that he was showing. He's not going to allow them because it's executive privilege.
I think Joe Biden's a criminal. I'm sure you got the cell phone recording where he's actually leaving a voicemail for Hunter discussing his business operations. but yet he says he has never discussed business operations with them. Shoot, you played golf with his business partners. You had his business partners on Air Force One with you. Really? You never discussed business? Let's look at reality. Reality check. And I'm not saying anything's right or wrong. Just look at the reality of it.
A clear lie. Anyway, about social engineering, it seems like, according to the polls, Brian doesn't have any faith in whether they're valid or not, and John has misgivings about it too. But whatever.
Then you have to look at the questions.
Right.
That's right. Exactly.
The question, I'll agree with that.
But anyway, it seems, according to the polls, and I think according to our own observation, a lot of the younger generation is more anti-American, anti-government, because I think of this propaganda that they're getting in high schools and especially colleges. All this stuff about racism, American founded on look, we moved beyond that. We got past the sin of slavery. We fought a civil war, at least in part because of that. White Americans died because of that, but that's not mentioned anymore. Cornell University took down a portrait of Abraham Lincoln in the Gettysburg Address because one kid complained about it. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought Lincoln was instrumental in freeing the slaves. This is how crazy this woke philosophy is getting and influencing the kids.
Look, you got a phrase out there called the big lie that CNN was told not to continue using. I don't know if they did or didn't. However, can nobody tell that the big lie, as ridiculous as far as I'm concerned it sounds, it's a propaganda thing. Can't you tell that it's a propaganda slogan? There's no, the big lie. Come on, it's almost funny.
I think a big part of the thing is it comes back to, like Larry was saying with the education. These people, if they're taken down like Lincoln and Jefferson, these were people that were faced against suppression, tyranny, and they stood up. They don't want this stuff in the history books. They don't want to give the next generation of voters to sit there and go, hey, if I stand up to you and I have the right belief, if I stand up to you, there's a chance I might actually win. And they want to just totally kick out any kind of hope for the future, so they don't rebel against them.
In the 1960s, Kennedy was assassinated. Too many people started saying, well, this doesn't make sense. One guy in the book depository, da-da-da. So people are coming up with their own conspiracy theories. The CIA comes in and says, too many people are asking questions. Let's shut this down. What can we do? So they demonize the phrase conspiracy theory. They make it something bad. And because of the Asch experiment of human conformity, and everybody wants to conform, they don't want to touch something that might make them seem ridiculous. So they don't look into anything. And anything you want people to not look into, all you got to do is label a conspiracy theory. CIA dispatch number 1035-960. 1035-960 is the FOIA documentation that shows what I just said, where the CIA demonized the phrase conspiracy theory to get people to stop looking into the Kennedy assassination. It works so well, they just use it for everything.
Look, and tearing down, the founding fathers, the history and all that. Yes, many of the founding fathers were slave owners. However, what they put in place with the Declaration and with the Constitution and the Bill of Rights allows the descendants of slaves today to enjoy all these other freedoms as Americans. And, that reflects why so many immigrants from other countries where they're truly repressed are literally dying to get into this country. So
wait a minute. How come it took over 70 years then for blacks to be set free by Abraham Lincoln in his speech? Why did it take a civil war and 70 years to do what you just said the founding fathers wanted to have happen?
What's your point, Brian? That makes no sense what you just said. It took 70 years because a lot of the founding fathers wanted to eliminate slavery, but the Southern delegates didn't want that. So it was a compromise to at least establish a nation that enshrined those other rights that eventually everybody, including the descendants of slaves, benefited from. I mean, that's a ridiculous argument. Why did it take
No, it isn't. No, it isn't. Why did the Southern states join the Union then?
There were Jim Crow laws that were in effect up even into the 1960s. So, I mean, the notion that the country hasn't had a problem because it had a racist slave system, obviously it had a problem. In some other parts of the world, they had different kinds of socioeconomic injustice, and the things don't just change just like that as a process.
Yeah, I mean,
But, you know, it doesn't take a theory. I mean, the notion that there's a critical race theory to me, it's an absurd term. There's no theory. It doesn't even mean anything. I don't even know a theory really is supposed to explain some phenomenon that can't be explained, and you subject the thing, you make up a theory and you test it. There's no theory. The country had a past based on some racist injustice, and then it encountered it. It had a civil war. Then they had a period of Jim Crow. They had laws that they enacted over time, finally wiping out the Jim Crow laws. And so this stuff has had an effect on various people's life chances. It doesn't take something called critical race theory. But unfortunately, what I see is that they're not teaching civics and what's in the Constitution. They're not teaching the history of the evolution of laws. They're not teaching how the government works with the checks and balances. So they've got a whole bunch of kids now who don't even know anything about the positive parts of our system.
Yeah,
you don't even know.
And technically, can you actually say slavery ended? Because I had to pull this up and read the 13th Amendment, which was signed after the Civil War to end slavery. Here it is, and you tell me what you think if slavery really ended. Quote, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, and it shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction, unquote. Does that sound like slavery actually ended with the 13th Amendment?
Well, I mean, you know,
well, a certain type of, you can't buy and sell people, and you can't subject people to your rule without their people having rights, you know, democratic rights.
Correct. And now this is a theory of mine.
Good.
I think this is a theory of mine. And you tell me if you think I'm too crazy on this. I think when slavery ended, really all they did with the 13th Amendment is they shifted slavery away from plantations to prisons. And I think that's why you see so many minority groups in prison today, is because of that. You've just transferred from plantation to prison. If that's, maybe I'm crazy on that, but explain why prisons are so overpopulated with minorities.
Right around the time the Obama administration.
Poverty breeds crime, and poverty,
True too.
you know, and so you have a mass of people in our country, because of its past, a lot of the people disproportionately were descendants of slaves who were poor.
Yeah,
so the fact that there's more crime there, it shouldn't be, that doesn't take a theory to explain it.
John, I agree with you to a point, but you know, the problem, as I said before, really is it was the breakdown of the family under slavery. And then a lot of the freed slaves moved north into the cities without resources. Their discrimination was much more severe then. It was hard for them to get jobs, hard for them to attain skills. So you have that kind of breakdown of the family unit and the economic oppression, which has led to that. I agree with that. But I mean, a lot has changed now. And instead of, if you look across the country, Congress people, district attorneys, all kinds of blacks in powerful positions. And a lot of those are ones who came up through education, which is not being emphasized by a lot of these black leaders.
Yeah, education, public education system in our country was once pretty damn good, but it's not all that good now.
It's not just that, John. It's the culture in the inner cities. You know, that you can't act white by being educated. Blacks admit that's part of the culture. It evolved because of the breakdown.
But the notion that someone being educated, it means that they're acting white is means that the people who think that have internalized racist ideas.
Even Don Lemon, the flaming liberal on CNN, before he became so woke, he could find this on tape. He said that education is being discouraged in the inner cities because it's called acting white. So that's that. Look, the foreigners come here, especially the Asians. They get ahead. Why? because they come over, they're more prosperous on average than white people because they come over with a good family, a strong family unit that encourages education as the way up, and they're very successful. So
certain segments of them were wealthy when they got here.
Larry,
some of them
Depending on, you know,
also stress education.
If,
Well,
you know,
that's
if you
right.
look at the Africans who came over here since the 1960s or 70s, a lot of them were wealthy when they got here, and a lot of them had education systems where they were that were better public education systems than what they had here. So you have to look at these things with a little bit more detail.
Well, John is right. You know, slaves came here with no heads up for anything. Let's remember, they were slaves.
Yeah. And by the way, if you want to blame this country for slavery, how about the African chiefs that sold their own people into slavery with the slave traders? So, you know, are we going to condemn the modern African countries because they were part of it in the beginning? This is why, I mean, instead of unifying the country, saying, you know, their opportunities are here, we'll encourage you with this and that, instead it's splitting the country with this resentment, this constant resentment, and not moving past the sins of the past.
could I say something here? Look,
Sure.
look, you got the Obama administration getting rid of the Smith-Mundt Act, and right before Obama leaves office, right around that time, he starts to demonize the Confederate flag, saying don't fly it on any buildings that are federal or state or whatever. That's the start of this, again, divide and conquer kind of thing. Well, now we're talking about critical race theory, slaves, this slave. Look, all that stuff was not being talked about prior to Obama and the Confederate flag thing, and it's been elevated ever since. Prior to that, everybody was fine. I'm okay. There might have been pockets here and there of discussion, but again, what we're experiencing is a divide and conquer thing. This has been introduced for that reason. Same thing with police. Why do people want to shut down police departments and stuff like that? Again, divide and conquer. You're experiencing manipulation. You're being manipulated.
All right. Well,
most people don't want to shut down police departments, actually.
Well, a lot of the leaders.
Majority of black people don't want to shut down police. They don't want
Hell
want a more fair and ethical police practices, but most people don't want to shut down. That's an absurd. It's an absurd.
Defund the police.
But a lot of these
saying I did not come up with defund the police.
Look at
well, right. There are elements that say defund the police.
Yeah,
and you know, and they wind up messing up their own movements.
Lori Lightfoot, the black mayor of Chicago, defund the police. Other big cities defund the police. Leaders, even black leaders, calling for that because
some have, some don't. Some have and some don't. These aren't defunded though.
In the big cities, it's largely calls to defund the police. So look, let's get closing comments here. Starting with this could go on forever, but we'll save some of our fire for our next installment. And thanks everybody for participating and being good natured about it. Let's closing comments. Let's start with Mark.
Well, I guess the question here is what subject are we talking about in closing comments? Because we covered so many.
Okay, you're right. Okay, the state.
What was it on patriotism or what?
Let's talk about whether we're moving towards a better future, considering all we've been discussing, or whether the division, the hatred, and the chaos is going to increase. What's closing arguments about that?
I think it's probably going to get worse because things are just getting more and more divided. People are starting to look more at what's best for their political parties or their ideology, and that until somebody can come together and bridge that divide, they're just going to keep on arguing tick for tat, and it's just going to keep getting worse until people actually come together.
Right.
Well, I think Mark's right. The issue is there's no unifier on the horizon here. Biden certainly isn't it. Trump certainly wasn't it. Obama certainly wasn't it. There's no one charismatic leader on the horizon who can take this country together from where it is now. And I think that Mark is right. The division is going to get worse. The scrapping is going to get worse. The name calling is going to get worse. And if you see Trump become ineligible to run for re-election because of the actions of this committee, you're really going to see the stuff hit the fan.
Let me get away from that machine.
Okay.
Damn machine.
I thought maybe your cigar lit you on fire or something, John.
No. It started, I don't.
Okay, he's not going to cook. Yeah.
Keep going.
Okay. Well, it's your turn, John. You ready to make a closing?
Oh, well, I think the big problem in the country has been the great shift in economic inequality in the country, with the ones on the top being super wealthy, and until there's a shift of political and economic well-being back to regular people, affecting our education system, our health system, job opportunities, job security, pensions, and things of that sort, then I think people will continue to be easily divided and follow these various nutty theories and desperate and ineffective measures. And so who's gonna, I don't know whether there's gonna be so much any kind of big leader. The problem is, of course, that the country doesn't have grassroots type organizations that could counter whatever the processes are that are causing this imbalance in wealth. So I don't see things getting better, but we never know, something might pop up. But trying to do it through having a war and talking about we're going to be expanding, NATO and power and all that kind of stuff. All of that's just taking more and more of the national wealth into areas that are not going to be good for regular grassroots Americans.
Okay, Rack.
When we were talking about what we're going to discuss, New World Order, social engineering was there, and we've diverged into many myriad of topics. But like I'm saying, what we're doing is we're arguing about the leaves and we're forgetting the forest. I'm talking about the forest. This is manipulation. The fights, the arguments, the problems that you see going on in society today is manipulation. In my opinion, and it's a very strong one, and it's based on much research, liberals, by becoming and watching the mainstream media news and becoming their talking points, like you can't, I'm trying to avoid a particular phrase here, useful idiot, okay? As far as I'm concerned, liberals watch too much mainstream media. The mainstream media is propaganda, and they're just parroting that. You got to get away from the mainstream media. You're getting propagandized.
All right, so what you're saying is you think it's going to get worse.
The New World Order is currently taking over. They're creating chaos. It's getting worse. And the way they're creating chaos is through their totally owned mainstream media, propagandizing, because of the Smith-Mundt Act being gone, the American populace. And the ones that are being successfully propagandized are what are known as liberals.
The founding fathers were all political liberals.
Yeah,
founded by
different kind.
They're liberals.
Yeah, they were. King George would have called them extreme liberals.
Yeah,
of a different kind. It was a liberal to get away from the control of the crown, whereas now it's a liberal just to cause chaos.
Well,
okay. And my opinion is it's going to get worse, and I don't know if it's at the point of no return. But
Bryant didn't get his turn.
Oh yeah, he did.
I did in the beginning. Yeah.
That's when your cigar was.
Say something else. Oh, my cigar. Okay.
Yeah.
I would recommend everybody to watch the movie with Denzel Washington, Manchurian Candidate. That's why I picked the background, and watch how he gets controlled in that movie. Now, in that movie, he's controlled with chemicals and various forms. But don't forget about Edward Bernays, how he controlled the entire world with just a little bit of propaganda. And that's what's going on in this world today. That kind of control that you see Denzel Washington have in that movie is happening to the people today, but just using a different method. Doesn't take the chemicals and stuff like that. All it takes is a mainstream media that's owned by the New World Order to push out their propaganda continuously 24/7, and you got to propagandize people.
All right.
It happened in North Korea, it happened in the Soviet Union, it happened in Nazi Germany. Somehow we don't think it's happening here. It is.
All right. That's enough out of you.
How about the first Manchurian Candidate? This was just the second movie.
I like the second movie better. The first one, I didn't like it as much.
That's
We can go on all day here. But thanks for joining us. Thanks.
that movie propagandized you.
Yeah. Thanks for being forceful and yet, social with each other, and not getting overly irate with each other. So we'll continue this. I hope our audience out there enjoyed the engagement here, and there'll be more like it very soon. So once again, thanks all of you people, and thanks to the audience for joining us. Bye now.